All right, here we go. AP Government, Part 5, Unit 1, notes, almost done, next to last part. Um, this part we need to talk about pieces of the Constitution because, well, that's the thing that we're going to use and look at constantly, and I'm going to make fun of constantly. What's so important about the Constitution? The thing that's most important is its flexibility. Not something people usually say when they're talking about a piece of paper, but we will. The Constitution creates a nice flexible system of government for us, which is unlike any government system that we had before. Um, you can see this outright before you ever read a word because you can see that the Constitution is relatively small. It only has 8,000 words, and there's only 27 amendments. And when you consider the founding of the country of the early 1700s till the current time, to only have 27 changes to it is saying something. And it's only 8,000 words, and you think, holy crap, 8,000 words is a lot of words. No, your textbook has that beat with like 5 pages. Um, what this does, having only 8,000 words, you can see in the underlined section here, it doesn't prescribe a structure or the actual day-to-day functioning of the national government. It leaves everything wide open. That's why it's called flexible, not because of whatever you're thinking in your mind. Get out of the gutter. Um, how does the Constitution really show flexibility? It's not the fact that it has the few words, it really comes out in something called judicial review. That's where it is put into practice, if you will. The idea of judicial review was actually brought up by Hamilton when there was the argument between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Hamilton wrote the second most Federalist papers in Federalist 78. He actually introduces the idea of judicial review. He says it's basically a part of the system of checks and balances, even though you're never going to find the words judicial review in the Constitution. It's extremely important. This is where you see the Constitution becoming adaptable so that it can survive for periods of time. That's why our country hasn't fallen apart like Thomas Jefferson predicted it should, right? So, why can't you find it? And judicial review is actually set up by a Supreme Court case, Marbury versus Madison, in 1803. I never asked for dates except for stuff like this. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. We'll get into the details of the actual court case, but this is when judicial review is established, and it's beautiful the way it's written by Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at that time. How the decision of Marbury Madison, the actual case itself. We'll take a look at it in class. But this sets up judicial review um, and really shows that the system of checks and balances and separation of power that Madison created with the Madisonian system can work. The great part about Marbury versus Madison, though, is that not only does it establish judicial review, but then it's never going to be used for another 50 years until the Dred Scott case, which most of you probably have heard of Dred Scott before. Deals directly with slavery. Lucky us. So let's talk Madison. Madison was an irritating son of a gun who was going to be rich, and everybody knew it. He was young, but he came up with a great idea when writing the Constitution, and that was preventing the tyranny of the majority. You say tyranny, I guess other people say tyranny. They're wrong. I say tyranny. Um, but my favorite part is the word thwarting here. The Madisonian system thwarts the tyranny of the majority, and it does this in two ways, and it's by limiting majority control and separating power. But we'll get into these ideas just a little bit more as we move forward. Madison himself actually puts it forward in Federalist 51, but you all know that because you read Federalist 51. And you clearly understood every word that was in Federalist 51. But with his separation of power and limiting majority control, you have thwarted tyranny. Gotta love that word, thwarting. This is just an actual diagram from your textbook showing Madison's plan and his thwarting of the tyranny and the separation of powers. Uh, The Madisonian system sets up three different things. It sets up separation of power, so each branch has its own power and is pretty much independent of the others. It creates a system of checks and balances, which means that there are actual rules and powers put directly into the Constitution in each branch that is meant to check the other branches. And you'll see that with another pretty picture I have. And it creates a federal system. Federalism divides power between a national government and state governments, or a central government and its subsidiaries. Ooh, big words. So here's my wonderful diagram. Here's what your book uses. Your book's diagram kind of sucks, much like the rest of your book. Boy, I wish I had known that when you guys first started the class and warned you of that. But here's my book. My book has a much better diagram that can show not just the powers of the particular branch, but the fact that there is checks and balances. So if you take a look at Congress and the legislative branch, it says that it can override presidential vetoes. That speaks directly to the fact that it is a power over another branch. This is the checks and balances system. The legislative branch is supposed to pass laws. So if you look directly under the picture, and it says pass laws. Over here, the executive branch over here is supposed to enforce laws. These are their individual powers. This is separation of power. But if you look over here, it says the president can actually propose a law. So this is where you see checks and balances. The president can veto laws, which only Congress can write laws and pass laws. So you can see the system of checks and balances and separation of power together actually built into the Constitution. I'm not going to show you the Constitution and make you read it because, well, we can do that in class. So separation of power, checks and balances. Separation of power is power specifically given to a branch. Checks and balances is a power given to a branch specifically to check the other branch. So the big thing to remember here is vocabulary. Express powers or enumerated powers, they're the same freaking thing. But this is where you're going to have your separation of power. Whenever I ask for express powers or enumerated powers of a particular branch, I want to know the power specifically to that branch that no other branch has. So what's all this mean for you? And how can you actually see this on your own? I love your enthusiasm. So this is what I want you to do. And once you open up your book, I want you to do this next. And because I know you're so enthusiastic, I know this is what's on your mind. And I have more instructions for you. And I know you are just dying for one little part and you're actually upset about it. Last little piece for you, for your assignment. And I know your enthusiasm is just extremely high at this point, and you're thinking, you're also thinking, and you have questions like this, and even more questions. And you want to know how long this should take as a homework assignment. I knew all of these things. So there you go. I'm not actually assigning this as homework. That would just be kind of mean. We'll do this in class. That's why I have you taking notes at home. But since there's no actual assignment this year, I have a surprise for you guys. Yes, indeed, it is federalism. My last little part on this part of the notes is federalism. In order to understand federalism, you have to understand where we came from. Before there was a constitution, there was the Articles of Confederation, and a confederation is where there's a very weak, loose national government, and the states have the most of the power. Our American system is sometimes called intergovernmental relations, which is actually federalism because there's a national, state, and local government level. What is federalism? It's a way of organizing your government system into a national government and then smaller governments. We do this at the national level and even at the state level. Um, very few countries actually work on a federal system. Most are actually a unitary system of government where the central government makes all the decisions and then it just goes down from there. You just have to listen to what the federal government says. What's so important about federalism? It decentralizes our politics and our policies. This is difficult to understand. We need class time to see this actually in action. Just know this, whatever happens in Florida probably doesn't happen in South Dakota. Um, and then I have a pretty picture of the president shaking hands and probably shaking babies too. But that's all I have. Um, take notes, write down your questions, and gosh darn it, be prepared for class because there's still one more part to go, and that's this part right here, your last final slide. The Constitution divides power between the national and state government. The Constitution itself actually defines powers of the national and state government, but that statement is kind of false. I'm sort of kind of lying to you with that. It just says the state has powers and the national government has powers. We'll see what kind of problems this has created. We'll leave that for Luke to annoy us with many questions in class and refuse to accept my answers that I give him. But tune in next time, same bat channel, for more wonderful government information.